The main character of this film is Ruji, who has just woken up from a strange dream. His body is drenched in sweat, and Ruji goes downstairs for breakfast before heading to the summer class he attends with his friends, Misaki, Mao, and Masato. It appears that Misaki has special feelings for Ruji, which Mao is aware of, so Mao often teases Misaki about it during class. Suddenly, a woman enters the classroom and immediately approaches Ruji. She pulls Ruji aside and asks the teacher for permission to take him away early. No one knows who this woman is, except for Misaki, who reveals that she is Ruji's cousin, Eriko. 3 years ago, Eriko lived here before leaving to study in the United States, and it seems that Eriko has just returned. Eriko has returned to meet Ruji and needs his help. Eriko asks Ruji to open her computer, which contains information about an organization that collects lost artifacts from around the world. This organization was recently established by Eriko. Eriko tricks Ruji into entering his name into the organization, and unfortunately, Ruji has been deceived into signing up. Eriko has not been able to fully register her organization because it has not yet met the requirements, and she is determined to obtain a Class S artifact to gain recognition from the higher-ups. That night, they make a deal to steal the artifact. Ruji thinks it would be better to hand this case over to the police, but if the police get involved, the artifact will be confiscated. Therefore, they hide near the transaction site, determined to obtain the artifact. Ruji worries that they won't be able to handle the gang involved, but Eriko has a wand that can be used for magic. Eriko assures Ruji that the wand is not cursed and he does not need to worry. When the gang arrives and the transaction begins, Eriko rushes forward in front of the gangsters and casts a spell. A swarm of butterflies appears and blinds the gangsters, giving them an advantage. Ruji grabs their briefcase and is then shot at by the gangsters, forcing them to flee quickly. They drive through the cargo area, pursued by the gangsters. Eriko asks Ruji to take the wheels so she can cast a spell to lose their pursuers. However, the spell isn't enough and the briefcase nearly falls. Ruji quickly moves to the back to secure the briefcase, but a bullet hits the briefcase, causing it to open, and a small girl emerges from it. The girl calls Ruji by name and shoots fire from her hands to drive away the gangsters. Meanwhile, Misaki arrives at Ruji's apartment building and sees them. Eriko and Ruji bring the little girl inside. Eriko asked Ruji if he knew the little girl they had just encountered, but Ruji admitted he did not know her. However, it was clear that the girl knew Ruji. Eriko noticed something around the girl's neck, but when she tried to touch it, the girl bit her and then immediately clung to Ruji without letting go. Despite their questions, the girl could only say Ruji's name and nothing else. Eriko tried to find more information at the headquarters but did not come up with any satisfactory results. Considering the risk of the girl being discovered, Eriko decided that Ruji should take care of her tonight, as no one else could stay close to Eriko. Eriko then instructed Ruji to go buy groceries for dinner, surprised by the amount of food the girls had consumed. Outside, Ruji met Misaki in front of the house. Misaki had been waiting to return the bag Ruji had forgotten in class. Just as Misaki was about to ask about the girl he brought home, Eriko quickly called him back inside the house. When Ruji entered the house, he found it in disarray due to the little girl's antics. Eriko then revealed that the girl was a dragon. The girl's hands had scales, and although dragons closely resemble humans, they can transform into full dragons when they mature. Ruji then prepared dinner while still wondering how the girl knew his name. Eriko suggested that they should inform Ruji's parents, but they were likely too preoccupied with their artifact matters. Ruji decided to name the girl and chose the name Rose. Meanwhile, Eriko brought out ice cream to teach her how to pronounce the name. The next morning, Ruji found Rose sleeping beside him. Initially, Rose had been placed in Eriko's room, but she moved to Ruji's room during the night. As Ruji was preparing supplies and breakfast, a helicopter arrived, and the scientist inside it detected the presence of a dragon here. Eriko complained about the organization caring only about money and lavishly sending a helicopter to pick them up, as dragons were of particular interest. The scientist, Takura, requested to see the mark on Rose's bracelet. Eriko warned Takura that Rose might bite, but Rose behaved well. Back at the headquarters, Takura was eager to learn more about the dragon because of the rarity of real dragons. Takura knew Ruji's name and recognized him as the son of a legendary couple. Takura continued to examine Rose and noted that much was still unknown about dragons, despite their external resemblance to humans. 10 years ago, dragons were only documented by one person due to their rarity, and the organization classified dragons as top secret. Takura discovered that dragons are born from eggs, and Ruji recalled that he had once encountered that dragon egg. It seemed that Rose was the dragon who hatched from the egg Ruji had touched years ago. This story explained why Rose was so attached to him. The first person Rose saw was Ruji, so Rose likely regarded him as her parent. This also provided an explanation for why dragons often develop an affinity for humans. Takura asked Ruji what should be done with Rose, whom Takura still wished to use for further experiments. Ruji's presence might make things easier. Meanwhile, Ruji's 3 friends were still gossiping about him staying with Eriko, and Masato continued to feel jealous of Ruji. Mao knocked him out of the window, and Mao tried to call Ruji, but it seemed Ruji had left his phone at Takura's house. At that time, Takura was examining Rose's bracelet but was still uncertain whether it was an artifact. Suddenly, Ruji's mother called Eriko and requested a meeting. She had heard about Rose and asked that Ruji not hand her over to the organization, which she believed did not care about artifacts but rather valued artifacts more than herself. Rose felt very lonely, but Eriko was adamant about not letting this influence her decision. Ruji asked Eriko to leave, and at the door, a handsome man with scales on his hands arrived at the organization. The man, introduced as Onyx, had come to take Rose. Onyx claimed to be Rose's fiancé and said that the bracelet she wore was an engagement token. Onyx demanded that Ruji stay away and threw him against the wall. Rose tried to fight back but failed. Onyx ignored Ruji and realized that his earrings were the lost artifact from 10 years ago. Onyx then nearly knocked Ruji unconscious with the intent to kill him. However, Rose intervened to stop Onyx and agreed to go with him. Ruji, who could do nothing, watched helplessly as Rose left. Rose, who seemed reluctant to be abandoned, began chanting a spell to make herself faint so she wouldn't resist. Eriko and the others tried to save Rose, but Ruji knew that he couldn't defeat Onyx. Meanwhile, Onyx explained that he wanted Rose to become his bride with the bracelet as a sign of their engagement. Onyx also discovered a hidden tracking device in the bracelet and ordered his men to prepare for a counterattack. Onyx explained that his goal was to become stronger. Even though he was already very powerful, it was still not enough to collect all the artifacts in the world. Eriko then asked Ruji if he wanted to leave since Rose chose to be captured, and Ruji recalled events from years ago. Rose had saved Ruji when he fell from a cliff. As a token of gratitude, Ruji decided to help Rose, so Eriko took him to the vault, a storage place for Class S artifacts owned by Ruji's parents. In this place, Eriko had full access rights and could take anything necessary. Among the artifacts was a dragon dagger, the only weapon capable of fighting the dragon that wielded it. Ruji, who wanted to thank Rose, felt the power of the dagger awaken, and with one slash, Ruji destroyed the surrounding area. After waking up, Rose decided to escape but was captured by Onyx. Onyx gave her a choice, obey him or face Ruji, risking her life. Onyx believed that humans feared dragons and considered them dangerous creatures. Onyx took Rose to the organization, stating that Ruji and the others had arrived outside the signal tower. The soldiers detected a barrier, but Ruji opened the door and easily penetrated the barrier. The soldiers then brought a helicopter to approach their tower. In the tower, they were confronted by Onyx's men, but Eriko and Ruji managed to sneak into the elevator leading to the wedding ceremony room. Rose was there to participate in the ceremony and didn't want Ruji to get hurt. Rose urged Ruji to retreat, believing that if humans hated dragons, then dragons would hate humans as well. However, Ruji expressed his true feelings toward Rose, and although Rose tried to resist, Onyx attempted to convince her to return by arguing that humans were the enemies of dragons and that Rose was engaged to him. The bracelet Onyx wore nullified the engagement, affirming that Rose would find happiness. Although his words did not affect Onyx, Onyx transformed into his full dragon form. Ruji's attacks had no effect on Onyx, and bullets became useless. Suddenly, a mark appeared on Rose's and Ruji's hands, indicating a bond between them. Ruji was able to use Rose's fire and launched it at Onyx, who was soon defeated. However, Ruji was suddenly wounded by a flying knife from Onyx. Rose had to heal Ruji once again, and they returned home together with Eriko. At home, Rose continuously fussed over Ruji, forcing him to seek help from Eriko. Eriko then planned something and took Rose away without Ruji's knowledge. The next day, the group went to the beach, and Ruji's 3 friends were also present. Misaki tried to pick out her swimsuit, but Mao reminded her that she had already chosen it. Misaki then walked towards Ruji, but Ruji chose to accompany Rose and play with her. As they were having fun, a girl observed them from a distance. Upon arriving at the hotel, Ruji received a letter inviting him to a meeting point mentioned in the letter. Rose and Eriko followed him to the meeting point, where they met the girl who had been watching him from the beginning. The girl introduced herself as Maruga, the white dragon and ruler of ice and snow. Maruga needed their help to retrieve the white dragon sword that had been stolen by humans. The sword was currently in the possession of a man named Evans, who lived near a church. Eriko recognized the name Evans as a member of the Holy Order who viewed dragons as demonic messengers. Maruga offered the location of the sword, as only they could help her, and the threat of hunting down every dragon and those who hid them left them no choice but to accept. The next day, Ruji followed the clues to the church and met Evans, who was very friendly. Unaware of Ruji's true identity, Evans explained that the sword was left behind by a hero who exterminated the dragon that attacked the village. The hero passed the sword down to future generations. Rose arrived, and Evans remained unsuspecting. However, when Ruji covered Rose's scales, some men arrived and caused trouble because Rose had burned their heads before. Evans became angry and, with a single movement, froze everything, including those inside the church. Ruji then asked Muruga why she wanted to take the sword, and Muruga explained that even though the sword was used to kill dragons, it still belonged to the Ice Flesh clan. Muruga did not reveal her complete reasoning. Ruji's friends then invited him to a festival that night, and Muruga joined them, although she kept her distance. As they split up to enjoy the festivities, Rose dragged Ruji to the shooting gallery to win a prize. Ruji won a prize for Rose and was trying to win another for Misaki when he overheard something about Masato and Muruga being confronted by thugs. Muruga then revealed that the sword belonged to a dragon who had once fallen in love with her. A human in the village executed the girl for getting close to the dragon, which then went on a rampage. Afterward, a swordsman used the sword to end the dragon's suffering. This event caused Muruga to develop feelings for him, so Muruga decided to lure Evans so they could steal the sword. The next day, Muruga went to the beach to meet Evans and lure him out. Eriko tricked Evans into teaching her how to swim, and when Muruga went to practice, her swimsuit melted and disappeared, causing Muruga to run to shore. Eriko lied that Muruga's swimsuit had been carried away by the waves and told Evans to go find her a replacement. Muruga was instructed to delay Evans for as long as possible. Rose chose to stay behind because she felt that Ruji was hiding many things from her. Although their bond was unintentionally overheard by Misaki, Ruji was shocked. As they headed towards the church, they found a man threatening people who were praying and trying to steal the sword. Eriko used her magic wand to blind the man while Ruji took him down. Their plan succeeded, but Evans returned and questioned Ruji about the sword, knowing that it was cursed and that anyone who approached it would lose their sanity. Evans confessed that the dragon in his story was his uncle, and his father had turned into a human to execute his uncle to maintain family stability. Mentioning his uncle as a taboo, Evans could no longer hide the truth. Meanwhile, Onyx's assistant arrived to inform Evans about the truth regarding the red dragon. Eriko recounted how Ruji had previously been manipulated by a cursed artifact, causing him to have a negative view of artifacts. Although Ruji still wanted to attempt to take the sword, Rose wished to speak directly with Evans, hoping that Evans would understand. However, no one was certain how he would react if Evans learned of his connection to the dragons. Rose set aside her worries and ran to the church, where Evans, now aware that Rose was a dragon, still viewed dragons as the enemies of humanity. Rose argued that she had never done anything wrong, but Evans continued to impose his belief. Ruji's group arrived and explained to Evans that the sword was manipulating his mind and that the hero admired by humans was actually Muruga's father. Evans was shocked by the truth about Muruga, who had gone mad and attacked her. Ruji, realizing that the only way to save the situation was to take the sword from Evans, used his fire power to force Evans to burn the sword to ashes. Muruga, with a broken heart, had to accept reality and allow her uncle's spirit to rest in peace. Evans decided that he must gradually come to terms with the fact that Rose and Muruga were themselves and not just the dragons he despised. The next morning, Muruga said goodbye to Ruji's group and gave a warm farewell to Ruji, an action that made Rose extremely jealous. Ruji's friends found Rose's presence very disturbing and demanded that Ruji marry Rose, deepening Misaki's depression further. A few days later, while Ruji was on his way to a party, he encountered a girl who was climbing a tree to rescue a cat that was stuck. The cat and the girl eventually fell, landing right on top of Ruji. The girl panicked when she saw Ruji but asked why Ruji tried to stop her from falling to the ground. As the girl released the cat, Ruji thought she had accidentally fallen, and he tried to catch her. The girl noticed Ruji's clothes and assumed that Ruji was also attending the party. She then turned away without saying a word to Ruji. Upon arriving at the organization's party, Ruji met Eriko and Rose, both of whom wanted Ruji to hold hands with them. Eriko introduced Ruji to several influential figures in the artifact collection world, including a man who had lost his collection 10 years ago, and his daughter. They then met Saki, a rising journalist. Saki learned about Eriko, and had just regained one of the 2 earrings lost by Onyx. Without the matching earring, the other one could not function, so Saki was determined to retrieve it. Ruji and Rose found a wanted poster in the newspaper about a criminal specializing in stealing class artifacts, most likely using a disguise involving animal ears and tails. Saki's disguise promised to inform Eriko if they had information about the other broadcast. Ruji then noticed the girl he had met earlier and went to greet her. The girl seemed surprised to see him there, while the guest's attention suddenly shifted. the girl distanced herself from Ruji, and not long after, the criminal reported in the news appeared and began stealing Class A artifacts, ranging from a woman's ring to a fat man's genie lamp guarded by a sentinel. The guard was nearly powerless to stop him, but when the criminal targeted Eriko's earrings, Ruji stepped in to block him. Ruji realized that the girl he had encountered earlier was the one who had now become the criminal. Not wanting to involve the woman behind him, Ruji blocked the guard's attempt to apprehend the criminal. As a result of Ruji's assistance, the criminal escaped, and Ruji was scolded by the guard. At home, Ruji complained about being interrogated all night. Eriko thanked Ruji for protecting her earrings, explaining that the earrings allowed the wearer to read the thoughts of the intended target. In the middle of the night, after Ruji moved Rose to her bed, he noticed an open window, and when Ruji entered the room, he caught the animaled girl named AI attempting to steal Eriko's earrings. Ruji blocked the door, and Eriko threw a binding rope that accidentally tied them both up. Rose also ran in, calling for Ruji and accusing AI of being a traitor. AI revealed that she had a master, and Eriko mentioned that whoever had sent her to steal was the real criminal. AI explained that her master had taken the earrings, and as AI struggled, she knocked over a bottle of wine that spilled onto Ruji, forcing them all to bathe together. With their eyes closed, after fumbling several times, they fell into the bathtub. While they were drying their hair, Rose clung to AI's tail for comfort. AI wondered why they could be so friendly without feeling disgusted. Rose explained that she was also a dragon, so it was not unusual if AI was half human and half cat. Although the thief still wanted to return to her master, everyone agreed that AI should not go back to someone who had exploited her. They pointed out that AI was a good person because she had helped the old woman at the party, even though AI refused to listen, and another bottle of wine fell on her head, knocking her out. When AI regained consciousness, Eriko had brought her food. Ruji reminded AI that the food was not poisoned at all. Eriko then called Takura to request information about who might be the thief's master. Most likely, the candidate was over 50 years old, while Saki insisted that her master was still young, making this seem impossible. A short while later, Saki appeared and said that she had found another broadcast for her. However, when it was opened, it released knockout gas. Saki called out and sprayed the gas at Ruji, causing him to lose consciousness. Saki then instructed them to take Ruji along on their journey back to her master. They began to ponder Ruji's words about how her master might not be as good as they thought. Upon arriving at the hideout, the blindfold and Ruji's bracelet fell off on their own. Saki decided to lock Ryuji in the basement, considering him an extraordinary individual and planning to interrogate him once Ryuji awoke. After imprisoning him, AI apologized to Saki for allowing herself to be captured. AI then returned to her room with Saki to rest. Saki went to fetch some food and asked AI to place the remaining earrings into a box. Curious about the earrings, AI tried them on. Saki returned and found AI wearing the earrings and sitting quietly, pondering their powers. Saki concealed the truth but believed that the earrings could read his thoughts. AI remained sweet and gentle in front of him, then requested permission to take the earrings to the laboratory before going to rest. Saki began to suspect something when AI turned around and asked if Saki had raised her at that time. AI realized the truth that Saki was the person who had kidnapped her 15 years ago and had treated her solely as an experimental subject. Upon discovering the truth, AI refused and fled. On her way, Eriko and Rose received information from a doctor that the individual was wanted by the organization, including Saki. Meanwhile, as AI awakened Ryuji was still concerned about AI's bruised wrist from being tied. AI still believed Ryuji was an enemy, thus AI refused and bit him. Ryuji was only worried about her. AI did not react to Ryuji's words, realizing that Ryuji was truly honest, and cried because she had nowhere else to turn. Ryuji wanted AI to come with him. Hearing Ryuji's thoughts about his desire to protect, AI was moved and agreed. Ryuji then noticed that AI was wearing his sister's earrings and took her to a place where they could escape. However, as soon as they reached the gate, Saki blocked their path. Saki removed her clothes, revealing tattoos all over her body. According to her, Saki and the doctor had integrated 5 ancient artifacts into her body. Another secret was that Saki was once human, but had transformed herself into a feral human. All of this was part of her plan to sabotage the organization with a simple motive: revenge against the loved ones who had been cursed and manipulated by the artifacts that the organization refused to help and neglected, fueling her hatred and leading to this scheme. Now, Saki needed someone to join her and become a powerful entity. Ryuji could not allow this to happen, so he drew Saki's attention and ran. They ran to the rooftop, but Saki used tentacles growing from her back to climb. Despite being attacked by Saki, Ryuji stood his ground to protect AI. When Rose and Eriko arrived, Ryuji was undergoing repeated attacks from Saki. Nevertheless, Ryuji remained steadfast in protecting AI and refused to surrender. Rose flew in to provide Ryuji with the sword, but as Saki attacked, AI quickly blocked and Ryuji was trapped by binding sand. In this critical situation, Ryuji and Rose made an agreement that allowed Rose to help Ryuji free himself from the sand that bound his feet. Seeing Ryuji's increasing strength, Saki attempted to use darkness to bind everyone and destroy Ryuji. However, Rose successfully used fire to burn away the darkness and defeat Saki. The artifacts embedded in Saki's body began to disintegrate, leaving only one artifact still active. AI ran toward her master, feeling deep sorrow for Saki. Eriko arrived and tried to silence Saki because the organization was approaching, but Saki remained standing and activated her last remaining artifact, causing herself to dissolve into dust. Saki was convinced that what she had done was not wrong and felt no debt to the organization she despised. Saki was determined not to let the organization obtain her information and research results. Despite her harsh words, AI's earrings vibrated, indicating that Saki had sincerity in her words. After this incident, AI felt that she had no family to return to. However, Takura arrived and revealed that they had found information about Saki's hiding place related to AI, as well as the family of a collector who had lost their daughter 15 years ago. This indicated that AI had a family that could be reunited. AI decided to go with the organization to meet them. Meanwhile, Ryuji informed his sister that he would join the organization to help others and learn more about the artifacts. The next day, Ryuji discovered that Eriko had secretly enrolled Rose in his school. Eriko did so quietly, knowing that Ryuji would not approve of her going to the school. At that time, an expert was scheduled to come and assess Ryuji's strength. Rose and Ryuji then went to class, and Rose was placed in the same class as him. Misaki, who secretly liked Ryuji, saw Rose always clinging to Ryuji and couldn't control her overwhelming jealousy. Misaki's irritation grew even more intense when a girl suddenly appeared, pulled out a bazooka, and fired at Ryuji, causing the entire class to panic. Ryuji ran to save himself, but the missile kept chasing him. Fortunately, Eriko threw a knife to Ryuji, and Ryuji sliced the missile in half. The girl who fired the missile then appeared and declared that Ryuji's standards were not high enough and that he was still too weak. Eriko then arrived and introduced the girl as Bianca, explaining that Eriko had also been tested by Bianca in the same manner. Rose, concerned for Ryuji's safety, firmly refused to let Bianca test him. To avoid any interference, Ryuji asked Rose to simply observe the first task, which was to measure his strength. However, Ryuji felt too embarrassed to comply with the request, and Eriko offered to take Ryuji's place. At that moment, Masato accidentally barged in, wanting to argue with Ryuji out of jealousy over all the attention Ryuji was receiving from the girls. Ryuji then asked for Masato's help in conducting the strength measurement. Eriko explained to Misaki that Bianca was an acquaintance best avoided to prevent any misunderstandings. Ryuji then underwent a series of physical tests, starting with gym exercises, getting kicked into a pool, undergoing radiation tests, and even having his face implanted in white powder. After the evaluation, Bianca wanted to ask a few additional questions about Ryuji's parents to determine whether his abilities were inherited or developed differently. Masato kept hovering around Bianca, prompting her to put on her own custom-made gloves and discard them. When Ryuji asked about his score, Bianca told him that his compatibility with the artifact was neither high nor low. Meanwhile, two of Ryuji's friends learned that tomorrow was his birthday and began brainstorming ideas for a celebration. Bianca then asked Ryuji if he had any experience with women. Eriko clarified the question by asking if Ryuji had ever dated someone, and Ryuji replied that he had not. Hearing this, Masato hugged Ryuji with relief, despite attracting attention from the girls. Bianca then received a phone call and decided on the final test for Ryuji, which was to fight a golem with the goal of putting him under pressure to release his maximum power. The golem attacked Ryuji, and Eriko blinded both of his friends to give Ryuji an advantage. Ryuji managed to dodge the golem's attack and succeeded in cutting off one of its legs, causing the golem to fall. However, the golem remained standing and continued to fight. Bianca sensed something was wrong and tried to stop the golem, but her control failed, so Bianca had to prepare to stop it manually. When Ryuji was captured, Rose spread her wings to save him, but she was also caught. Bianca then sped her car toward the golem, causing the golem to fall onto the vehicle carrying Ryuji and Rose. As Bianca tried to stop it, she remembered a similar incident involving an uncontrollable golem within the organization when she was young, but she had been saved by someone. Now, the same situation was happening again. Ryuji and Rose used their packages to enhance their powers, and Ryuji delivered a fiery punch that successfully sliced the golem in half. Bianca took the opportunity to measure Ryuji's statistics, which turned out to be the highest she had ever seen. Rose apologized to Ryuji for revealing that she was a dragon. The next day, Bianca apologized for dragging everyone into trouble and announced that she would be moving next door to Ryuji's house to monitor him more closely. Ryuji received birthday gifts from his 3 friends, but Misaki gave him frog-themed items, which Ryuji despised. Bianca realized that she had mixed up what Ryuji liked and disliked, leading to his friends being blamed. On a holiday, Ai and Misaki brought items for Ryuji to see. Meanwhile, Ryuji's family received a package that Eriko mentioned should have been sent elsewhere but was misdelivered. Upon opening it, they found that the package contained a painting. At that moment, Ai and Misaki arrived with a cake, so the groups sat together to eat. Rose fed Ryuji a piece of cake, which made Misaki want to do the same. However, the last piece was eaten by Ai, who praised the taste of the cake, which seemed fine to Misaki. Suddenly, the painting began to display many lies, and Ryuji saw a shadowy figure within it. Unexpectedly, the 4 girls were sucked into the painting at that very moment. Inside the painting, the girls found themselves in a town depicted within the artwork. Eriko had to calm Misaki down to prevent her from panicking. The 4 girls believed that Ryuji would save them, so they began searching for him. However, their efforts led them nowhere, and the word, lies, kept appearing everywhere. After regrouping, Rose realized that the town resembled one from a movie they had watched a few days earlier. In that movie, there was a killer wielding an axe. When Rose mentioned this, Misaki saw the killer appear in front of them. Ai fought the killer, and Rose shot at him, but the killer remained standing and desperately pursued them. They sought refuge in an abandoned house. However, the killer continued to chase them. Bianca suddenly appeared, realizing that the situation was the result of a cursed artifact. Together, they searched the house and found a basement. In the basement, they discovered another room filled with pictures of girls and the word, lies. Misaki was manipulated by the killer in the mirror, who wanted her to reveal her most important memories. However, Misaki was not swayed by the killer's words. Outside, Ryuji suddenly appeared, throwing his sword at the killer and destroying him. After everyone emerged from the painting, Ryuji told the others to rest. Ryuji looked at the shattered mirror and realized that the shadowy figure within it was a reflection of himself. Eriko felt grateful for having escaped the painting, and Bianca decided to return to the city with the others. A few days later, Ryuji's group decided to go camping. During that time, Rose and Misaki were busy cutting vegetables, including onions, which made them cry. Meanwhile, Ryuji was preparing the stove, and Eriko used the excuse of being tired after driving to avoid helping them. Suddenly, a dragon girl who resembled Rose appeared and introduced herself as Sapphire, Onyx's lover. Ryuji and Eriko were shocked to hear that Onyx had been resurrected, but they were not as surprised to learn that Onyx had another lover. Sapphire confessed that she had come to avenge Onyx, but all she managed to do was create water bubbles and drop them on the heads of the 3 girls who were cutting onions. Taking advantage of the distraction, Eriko ran to the car to retrieve her magic wand and summoned a swarm of butterflies that successfully knocked Sapphire into the water. Frustrated, Sapphire eventually left. At the same time, Misaki began to realize 2 important truths: that Rose was a dragon, and that half-human, half-beast creatures indeed existed. Rose added one more revelation about her identity as a beast person and hoped Misaki would keep it a secret, to which Misaki agreed. At Onyx's headquarters, Sapphire was scolded by her assistant for acting impulsively and childishly. Her assistant reminded her that if Onyx could not defeat someone as inexperienced as Sapphire, then he also had no chance of succeeding. It was then mentioned that Onyx would be away for a few days and prohibited Sapphire from leaving the premises. Reluctantly, Sapphire accepted the order. The next day at school, Rose had to stay with Ryuji's 3 friends because Ryuji and Eriko were attending the reopening ceremony of the tower that had previously been destroyed. Ryuji's main goal was to see if the organization truly intended to protect Rose. They met with the doctor and Bianca there. The doctor seemed to understand Ryuji's concerns and assured him that the rednet left by Onyx had provided sufficient material for experimentation, so they would not disturb Rose for long, unless absolutely necessary. After school ended, Rose told Misaki that she could go home by herself. On her way, Rose met Sapphire. They almost fought, but Sapphire accidentally sabotaged herself, so Rose took her home, washed, and dried her clothes. While having a meal together, Sapphire confessed that the reason she didn't like Rose was because Onyx always paid more attention to Rose than to her. However, Rose said that she only liked Ryuji, which made Sapphire think that if she let Rose be alone, no one would compete with her for Onyx's attention. Sapphire then asked Rose if she had undergone a coming-of-age ceremony that required her partner to kiss the mark on her hand to be considered an adult. Rose believed that Sapphire was already an adult, but Sapphire pointed out the difference between adults and children. If Rose felt embarrassed about Ryuji, she was already an adult. But if Rose was always happy and clean, she was still a child. Rose then asked Sapphire to teach her the ceremony. After giving careful instructions, Sapphire left abruptly. When Ryuji and Eriko returned, Rose immediately asked Ryuji to help her become an adult. Ryuji was surprised and didn't understand why Rose thought this way. However, after sitting down and listening carefully, Ryuji understood the whole story. Eriko advised Rose not to associate with people from Onyx's side, but Ryuji didn't hold a grudge. Above all, Ryuji wanted to know the purpose of this coming-of-age ritual. Eriko searched for information online but found nothing. Rose then explained how to perform the ceremony as she had been taught by Sapphire, and Ryuji agreed because the ritual didn't seem too dangerous or difficult. Ryuji then kissed Rose's hand as per the ritual, and Rose's body began to undergo strange changes. Her body heated up and became very sensitive to Ryuji's touch. Rose screamed and pushed Ryuji away, so Eriko told Ryuji to let her handle it. In their room, Rose expressed her feelings to Eriko. After listening, Eriko assured Rose that it was not serious and that she would get used to it in a few days. Rose was afraid that Ryuji would hate her for yelling at him, but Eriko promised to explain everything to Ryuji and told him to rest. After leaving the room, Eriko informed Ryuji that it was not a serious matter. It's just that Rose was undergoing some changes to become more human. Meanwhile, at Maruga's place, an intruder entered without taking anything, making her suspicious that Onyx was behind it. Maruga then prepared to face the next day. That morning, Rose woke up and met Ryuji. They both awkwardly glanced at each other during breakfast, and if they accidentally touched, they would retreat. This made Eriko uncomfortable because everything was normal yesterday, but now everything had changed drastically. They then went to school while keeping their distance from each other. Meanwhile, Bianca arrived asking for food, so Eriko asked her to assist with the ongoing issue. Bianca borrowed Eriko's computer and began accessing a secret website belonging to the organization. Back to the main characters, Rose went to class and met Misaki and Mao. They inquired about her current situation. On the other side, Ryuji also sought advice from Masato. Rose explained that she felt her face flush when near Ryuji, and her heart raced when she touched him, hence she wanted advice from Misaki. Realizing that Rose had feelings for Ryuji, Misaki was unsure what to do and merely commented that if she knew, she would have already won Ryuji's heart. From Ryuji's perspective, he hoped Masato could guide him as he believed Masato understood women better. However, Masato admitted to having information but lacking experience. Back in class, the two met again and awkwardly lowered their heads. Meanwhile, Eriko and Bianca continued their search for information when Sapphire suddenly flew in to retrieve the shoes she had left behind. Eriko quickly used her wand to summon butterflies and knock Sapphire down. Eriko then demanded to know what had happened to Rose, and Sapphire revealed that she had experienced similar symptoms and had recovered after being sick for a day. Bianca asked Eriko when Rose's symptoms had started, and it was discovered that they began the previous night. Due to being ill for half a day, Rose fainted during gym class. The teacher wanted to take her to the hospital, but Ryuji insisted on bringing her to the headquarters to be examined by the doctor. However, the doctor could not diagnose Rose as there were no pathogens in her body, making it impossible to prescribe medication. Nonetheless, her body continued to experience fever and excessive sweating, posing a serious threat if not addressed promptly. Ryuji, who was anxious, pleaded for help, but the doctor admitted to not knowing what to do. Onyx's assistant then appeared, claiming to have a way to save Rose. The assistant revealed that they knew of Safi's presence through surveillance and eavesdropping, but requested Ryuji to accompany them as Onyx wanted to meet him personally. The two then headed to the rooftop, where the assistant produced a bottle containing a message from Onyx. In the message, Onyx stated that he did not know how to cure Rose, but during his search for answers, he discovered that Ryuji was a type of artifact known as a dragon camera. Therefore, despite Rose's closeness to him, she always felt fearful. Onyx concluded that Ryuji could not stay with her. Only Onyx could save her, and left the decision to Ryuji's feelings. Powerless, Ryuji reluctantly handed Rose over to Onyx's assistant. After Rose was taken away, Ryuji was detained by security but was released a few days later. Upon returning to school, Ryuji tried to act normal but could not concentrate in class. When AI brought him food, Ryuji was jolted back to reality. At Onyx's place, Rose suffered from being away from Ryuji. Sapphire appeared and tried to comfort her, but Rose refused to speak and only cried, while Onyx attentively observed everything from a distance. Amid the tense situation, Sapphire provided Rose with familiar food in the hope of helping Rose gradually recall her memories with Ryuji. As Rose began to reminisce about those times, Eriko successfully led everyone to the aircraft. As soon as Rose saw Ryuji, all the memories that had been lost returned to her mind. She remembered that she did not want to grow up if it meant having to part from Ryuji. Rose simply wanted to remain a child, enjoying her time with Ryuji without the worry of separation. However, Ryuji gently reassured Rose that everyone, without exception, must go through the process of growing up. Ryuji hoped, despite their limitations, that Rose could grow alongside him, facing future challenges as a stronger individual. Suddenly, outside the aircraft, Onyx transformed into a giant dragon, lifting the entire plane into the air. In that critical moment, Ryuji's parents appeared to assist their son, delivering a decisive blow to Onyx. With renewed strength, Ryuji and Rose strengthened their bond, unleashing a tremendous energy that completely thwarted Onyx's evil plans. Just before Ryuji's parents were about to leave, Bianca arrived just in time to ask for their signatures. However, due to exhaustion from releasing such great power, Ryuji and Rose eventually fell into a deep sleep. A few days later, Ryuji and his friends returned to school, continuing their daily lives with renewed hope. And with that, their story ended, leaving behind a trace of togetherness and growth that would always be remembered.